Hello and welcome to another edition of Lion's Roar, the DUP's podcast. I hope you're enjoying the content and you're subscribing and you're liking. Today we are joined once again by my good colleague and US correspondent, Sammy Wilson. Sammy, welcome back to Lion's Roar.
And thank you very much for the invitation. And although we're not doing it in New York, we're doing it in North Belfast. Nevertheless, I'm very pleased to be on the programme.
It's just as nice. North Belfast have their own stars too. Rihanna was here once.
That's absolutely right. And of course, we've got plenty of stars here from North Belfast. And I'm very happy to be amongst them.
Good. So talking of all things America, have you noticed a day since the 20th of January that the US hasn't been in the news?
No, I haven't. In fact, I was remarking that the other day that, Trump said he was being elected. He wanted to be elected to make America great again. At least as far as the United Kingdom was concerned, he has made America news again, because almost every day the BBC, not in very flattering terms, of course, tend to report from America. Oddly enough, when Biden was making a mess of their country, the biggest country in the world and the most important economy in the world, BBC were almost silent.
Turn a blind eye, did they?
Glossed over his mistakes, all his faux pas, and more important than that, all his policy mistakes. And now, of course, they can't get enough of Trump. I don't think it matters too much to him. In fact, if anything, he is having an effect on the United Kingdom already. You look at some of the things he does. I mean, I just love the way he does government. He makes government so exciting. Like when you consider we have a prime minister who makes the governing of the United Kingdom look like the most boring job in the world. And Trump makes the governing of America look like the most exciting job of the world. And actually puts a bit of showbiz into it as well. Here's a great law here, signs it with a flourish.
Best law ever.
Here's our best one ever. Here's another cracker. That's the way I think you interface with people and show that your government is doing something for them. And of course, what has happened now is that we actually find some UK politicians are recognising that the things that he is doing, they're now going to have to address. I mean, who would have ever thought you'd have had a Secretary of State for Health saying that he's going to scrap all the equality, diversity and inclusion, employment, recruitment in the health service, and they should stop worrying about whiteness and everything else and get on with dealing with patients? Or,
Well, that's a Secretary of State for Health, by the way, who before he entered Parliament, his job was to promote the creation of diversity and equality officers within government departments in Stonewall.
Exactly right. Exactly right. That's what he did. And now he's finding that because these issues are now becoming prominent and it's being shown how damaging they are, how destructive and how stupid and daft they are on some occasions, he's having to follow suit. And I mean, I'm sure he wouldn't like to say he was following suit from Donald Trump, but Donald Trump is actually setting the agenda. And I think that that's something that our government should be aware of. And of course, now he's talking about putting tariffs on the EU. The one thing that Keir Starmer shouldn't be doing is saying that he's going to side with the EU and suck up to them and lick up to them and say he's going to join in the fight against America. He should be distancing himself as far as he can so that Britain doesn't get impacted by it as well.
Yeah, so here there's quite a lot in that. So let's unpick some of it during the course of this podcast. The first thing is in UK politics, you'll often hear people talk about the dead cat theory. That if you're in the midst of a crisis or something's going wrong, you slam a dead cat on the table and everyone forgets about what the problem was. Trump's doing one of those about every 10 minutes. Like his presidency seems to be bizarre, new, look at this, bang, bizarre, new, look at this. Whenever he did his inauguration day, there must have been about 20 serious and significant policy announcements all in one press conference. And each of them could have dominated the news cycle for a week. And yet he just goes from one to the next to the next. But on tariffs, he worked. Both
Absolutely.
Canada and Mexico have had to change their tune.
They
What do you think of
have.
that?
They have. And foolishly, the EU think that they can resist. I think that they'll find it. They're wrong in that. And that's why I don't think we should be joining in a fight with the EU against America in this. But as you say, Colombia, he threatened tariffs, and the next day they were accepting the illegals back into their own country. Canada and Mexico have quietly given in to the demands he made. I mean, sometimes I think that he throws these, as you say, dead cats on the table, knowing that by using them, he's actually going to get, maybe he never even intends to do anything about it. But if people believe he's going to do something about it, they'll react and they'll move quickly. And Canada and Mexico are a good example. I think the EU are probably too stupid and too arrogant to learn the lessons from other countries, and probably will try to take them on and will be subject to tariffs. And of course, that's going to have a huge impact on their economy, especially since their car industry and many other industries depend upon the American market. It'll also have a huge impact on the Irish economy as well. And I noticed that the Irish are panicking already, sending envoys and people over to talk to American administrators and civil servants, etc., trying to maybe disengage Ireland from some of this.
Yeah, so he's going to make America great again. He's made the US news again in the UK. He's going to make Greenland green again. I mean, it's fascinating stuff. But when it comes to...
And you look, even the Greenland one, you look at how the Danes have now kind of moved to say, well, if they need more presence of American troops there to safeguard the West, we'll give in. I mean, every thought of looters, he's going to go and take over Greenland. But even by saying that, he focused minds on the issues he wanted to be focused on, i.e., how can we ensure that Greenland becomes a base in the face of a more aggressive Soviet Union?
Yeah, so we'll talk about the EU and we'll talk about Ireland specifically, but on EU tariffs and Ireland being a base for a lot of US tech companies and IT companies, there's always been this inter-EU discussion around corporation tax. And Ireland has always been very low compared to the EU average. And there's been a quest within Ireland to level up. So there was a huge fine against the Irish Republic on corporation tax, last year, 2 years ago.
Yeah. They didn't even want to take the tax off the country. Must be the only government in the world that says, we're entitled to take taxes off you. In fact, we're being instructed to take taxes off you, but we don't want to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that does show, however, how independent the Irish are on American investment, and must make them very nervous about any conflict, economic conflict between the EU and the Americans.
And so we're getting into a period of time where Ireland, Northern Ireland, the Republic of Ireland, Ireland represented by the patron saint, they all emigrate to America for about 5 days. And they spend a fortune talking with the great and the good and sharing the shamrocks and sipping green beer. And the Northern Ireland Executive has always been represented in that too. But this year's going to have a different feel. There's got a Trump presidency. You've got Irish nervousness about the pivot of the Trump presidency. But you've also got the suggestion now that some of our local leaders might be less inclined to travel to Washington this year because they don't like the inhabitant of the White House. What do you think of that?
And you talk about bigotry. I mean, well, they were quite happy to go over and meet Biden, even though Biden wore his anti-Britishness on his sleeve. In fact,
no orange feet in the White House.
No orange feet in the White House. Yeah. Don't give interviews to the BBC because it's a British Broadcasting Corporation, etc. He wore his republicanism, his anti-Britishness on his sleeve. And Unionists were expected to go over and take part in all of those St. Patrick's Day celebrations, etc. And now we see that Sinn Féin are threatening or suggesting they might not be prepared to do that, simply because we've got a president who does not represent their point of view or is not sympathetic to their point of view. I suspect that on the whole Irish question, Trump is probably indifferent. And difference is far better than the kind of bigotry that we had from Biden.
Yeah, but you also have a president who, not for the first time by any stretch because of the founding fathers and individual since, but in my living memory, a president who has Scottish roots, Ulster Scottish connections, and certainly a vice president who has even stronger connections with Ulster itself and with Coke in particular.
And, so far they haven't demonstrated much of a sign that is going to influence how they think about Northern Ireland and how they think about Northern Ireland's relationship with Britain and everything else. But at least those are things which we as unionists ought to be exploiting. And, I always think that sometimes the unionist cause has not been as well represented in America because we have thought that all Americans are the kind of green shamrock, drink the green Guinness, and are all think of the old home country in terms of being Irish. I don't think that the Scots, Irish as they call themselves, or the Ulster Scots ones, have kind of as tight a connection with their own homeland. They tend to go there and be Americans.
Yeah.
But if there are those connections, then we ought to be exploiting them. And especially if it comes to trade, I mean, we should be emphasising to Donald Trump, if he's going to do a trade deal with the United Kingdom, do it so it affects the whole of the United Kingdom. If there are going to be tariffs placed on goods coming into the EU, he's got to insist that our government does not allow the EU to impose those tariffs in Northern Ireland because of the protocol. And I think that those are the kinds of things we ought to be talking to a sympathetic president about. And if the door's kind of half open, then push it a wee bit.
Yeah, and that's responsibility that rests on the Northern Ireland Executive. And so, there'll be no difficulty from our perspective, but there may be others who are a bit reticent. They should be going and using the opportunity to promote Northern Ireland.
Well, we can't claim in Stormont to be wanting to promote the economy and promote jobs for their constituents and promote a better standard of living for their constituents, and then at the same time be silent on issues which may have a detrimental impact. And that's, I think, where the challenge, and we should be challenging them every day on that, and will challenge them every day on that, look, they may have these long-term Republican aspirations, but their own constituents, and I mean, let's turn their own constituents against them. If they're not going to fight for their own constituents' jobs and well-being and everything else because they don't like the president of the United States, then let's expose that. There are plenty of ways we can fight this battle.
Yeah, and then of course you mentioned tariffs. There's almost a great unknown about whether there'll be tariffs on the UK, tariffs on the European Union, a mixture of both, and where we sit in that, given the situation that we're in. Though you and I have heard continuously year after year from this government, previous governments, that we will benefit from any UK trade deal, and we know that they want to secure a trade deal with the US. So whilst we don't know what the impact will be, we need to be alive to the concerns, and we need to be talking to our government about making sure that Northern Ireland isn't collateral damage either way in this international turf battle on tariffs.
I think that first of all, at a national level, we ought to be cautioning our government, not that we're going to have much influence on, but we're certainly raising the and we do and have, and you have and I have raised these issues with them, that look, don't be cozying up to the EU if it's going to be detrimental to our trading relations with America. We're dependent upon America for so many things. It's a big market, it's the world's richest market. We import a lot of goods from them. We get a lot of investment from America. Don't be picking the wrong side in this fight. And then secondly, if there are detrimental side effects of whatever trade war might develop between the EU and America, let's make sure that our government fights to ensure that we're not caught up as a result of the protocol in the most detrimental impacts of that.
Good. Would you go to America? Would you engage with this administration yourself?
I certainly would, and I think, and we should also be encouraging others to do that. And I know that almost every week in the House of Commons, because I sit beside the reform folks who do have some influence and have some contacts there, I talk to them continuously about, can they make sure that that message gets across, that we're a victim of the kind of EU land grab or constitutional grab, and that if Trump wants to help Northern Ireland avoid the impact of that, then he must be cognizant in any trade deal that our interests should be considered.
And we know that Vice President Vance, he hails from Coke outside Macrofelt, and we know that President Trump loves golf, and we know that the Open's coming here later this year. Wouldn't it be great to see them visit Northern Ireland, and you could even show them the Gobbins? I bet you the Gobbins would be the best tourist attraction in the history of the world.
Well, I'll not exaggerate, but it will be, it'll be a good tourist attraction to see. But I think, I mean, those are the kind of opportunities we ought to be looking for. And I mean, we do know people who have got contacts, direct contacts with J.D. Vance. We should be using them, whether they're broadcasters. I can think of some broadcasters who have got a good relationship with them. We have got other openings, political openings, etc. Encourage them to come to Northern Ireland and to see attractions which would actually be relevant to them anyway.
Yeah, and we've got a potential state visit coming up to the United Kingdom. Churchill's back in the Oval Office. The bust has been restored. So there are connections and relationships that we can certainly build on.
Well, I think that certainly Trump with his connections with Britain are very, very close, because it's not like 300 years ago. His mother hailed from Scotland. So, there's those close connections which I think would be mad not to exploit.
Yeah, now sum it up for us. We've got a good opportunity. We're going to have an interesting, sometimes enjoyable, sometimes energetic, sometimes frantic, remainder of these 4 years. But it's going to be fascinating.
I think it'll be brilliant. And especially when I see how apoplectic some of the BBC and other commentators get about the things that he says, the things that he does, the threats that he makes, etc. I just love to see how uncomfortable they are about all of this. And it angers me at times as well to see how spiteful and how biased they are in the way they report. But at least we know more about American politics now. If it diverts the BBC, especially in Northern Ireland, from acting as if it was a branch of RTE and reporting more in the South and reporting more in America, I'd be pleased. And I think that most people from a Unionist perspective will be as well.
Well, there you are. You've set down the gauntlet. Sammy Wilson, thank you very much for joining us on Lions Roar. And thank you to all of you for joining us as well. Please do please do subscribe, and please make sure you're here with us next time when we continue our conversations on this podcast.